Just about a year ago, we had a game release called Grow a Garden. The game at one point was the most popular game in the entire world, but with time, people began to quit it. And once 2026 came around, Grow a Garden had its player count drop lower than ever since its release. But recently, the game suddenly became pretty popular again, and you could even see it hit over 100,000 players on a daily basis, something that hasn't really happened for months at this point. And seeing how well it is doing again, could this actually be a comeback of Grow a Garden? The past few months has probably been the worst time for Grow a Garden players. The game itself still had a few tens of thousands of players, which doesn't look like much on a graph since it's a huge drop compared to the game's prime time, but in general, the game was still making a lot of money. And the reason the game was at its lowest player count ever since release is simple: really bad updates. Players weren't happy, but then Grow a Garden team teased something which returned the interest. Everyone was waiting for Jandel to be back to being a part of Grow a Garden, and the team behind the game were teasing that quite often. And then it was revealed that Jandel will be coming back on Easter event, and that update did get quite a lot of hype. Over 1 million of people were interested in Grow a Garden's Easter event, which was a lot more than usually. The hype did show itself, with the game getting over 1 million players during admin abuse for the first time in months. And now that Easter event is out, the game has been getting double and sometimes even triple the player count compared to the week before Easter update. And the update was actually pretty good compared to anything from the last 3 months. It had much more content for people to play with, and they finally listened to players. The event starts with you getting a separate garden, which is actually pretty nice since it makes it easier to handle only the event plants. You buy Easter plants, then sell them for event currency to afford even better ones and become richer. You can also harvest crops and give them to this guy. You get seed packs in return. The seed packs are actually a bit more free-to-play than normally, since you can get exotic ones even as a free-to-play player. You also need event currency to buy golden eggs, which contain some new pets. There is also a pretty simple egg hunt, and it's simple because the map has like nowhere to hide the eggs. The amount of new likes and removed dislikes really show that people liked the update. And what I think makes the update so good is that they actually tried to make it somewhat similar to the older Grow a Garden. The main reason behind Grow a Garden becoming so popular that it was breaking records in the first place is because the game was simple enough where anyone could play it and understand what to do. Plant some plants, grow crops, and become rich while also being able to get a few boosters to help you. And on top of all of that, RNG for how big your plant and crops grow. Simplicity and randomness is a good combination, and it worked really good for Grow a Garden. With more updates, that simplicity was fading away, and so did the player count. But this Easter event manages to somewhat bring back that simplicity. Besides getting a completely empty garden for the event, so that your monstrosity of a garden isn't there, you also can't use pets at all. You can't even place the event eggs in the Easter garden. For months, their own fans were screaming at the team behind Grow a Garden. And now that they finally decided to listen for once, the game actually got a huge boost in player count and is once again pretty high on the list of the most popular games on the platform. But what I think also helps this update is just how good it looks compared to any other update from the past few months. As I said, the game was at its lowest player count because of how bad the updates were. This feed, a pet update post I showed earlier, is definitely the worst update the game ever had. And I say this because no new content was added. You just had already existing permanent eggs hatch every 10 minutes into pets that already existed for months. A week later, the bird nest update was somewhat similar, but at least it had a new egg with pets. Both updates did not add a single plant into a garden game, by the way. And Grow a Garden team noticed that people weren't happy, so they made an update which did add new plants, but it all was based off of an already existing plant in the game. Imagine Valentine's event where you just get mutations for 5 rewards, and you can just skip that entirely with Robux. With these kind of updates, it's even surprising the game had tens of thousands of players. And fun fact, the 2 updates that didn't add new plants did actually add new plants, but they were locked behind merch. So imagine going from updates like that to the Easter event, which probably added more content than all updates combined from January and February. And don't forget the fact that they also were hyping up the update a lot with Jandel coming back, which is also something people wanted to see. And while Grow a Garden was at its worst point since release, something else was happening. A new gardening game was about to release, which actually had a lot of hype around it. And I'm talking about Garden Horizons. Remember this game? Garden Horizons was meant to be a higher quality, grow a garden with more care about the players. And the release looked promising. It averaged about 100 to 200,000 players and was even able to peak at well over 1 million players thanks to admin abuse. But the updates were boring, and the entire developer team left the group because of a bad owner. And right as that was happening, Grow a Garden might have taken advantage and decided to finally do a good update, which probably worked even better since everyone was disappointed with Garden Horizons. And while I've been working on this video, Grow a Garden released a Part 2 of Easter event. It did add a bit less content than Part 1, but people still liked it at least because, once again, players were heard and Candy Blossom came back, something that a lot of people wanted to happen. When Easter event was about to happen, it had about 1.4 million people interested, and the game managed to get over 1 million players. Well, Part 2 did no worse. It actually had even more people interested in the update, and it once again got over 1 million players on the admin abuse. And at the moment, Grow a Garden is in top 10 most popular games on Roblox. It actually has more players than it had during Part 1 on a Sunday. And that's what happens when Grow a Garden actually listens to their fans and do what the majority of players want to happen. But I do still have a few questions. What's up with Grow a Garden 2? That game has been worked on for a bit at this point, and it did make sense for it to have a sequel since Grow a Garden had less players than ever since its release. I even had my own little theory that they wanted to have Jandel as a PR move and a way to get more attention to then release Grow a Garden 2. After all, Jandel was revealed to be taking a part in Grow a Garden 2. But all of that hype was for the main game instead. And obviously there is no reason to release a sequel to a game if the main game has this amount of players. They have been posting leaks of Grow a Garden 2 for a while already, and still have been posting even during the Easter event. And from what I've seen, Grow a Garden 2 is just kind of meant to be an upgraded and cleaner version of the original. But still, I doubt we'll see the sequel release as soon the main game has high player count like this. And about high player count, so is this actually a comeback of Grow a Garden? The Easter event is pretty good, and players are happy, but I feel like it might be too early to call it a comeback. When Grow a Garden was starting to lose players, it was mainly because of the updates just feeling repetitive, even though they had a decent bit of content. The Easter update feels fresh, especially with this thing where you get a whole new garden just for the event, and the fact that you can't use your pets either. But they can't repeat the same thing for every update, otherwise it'll get repetitive too and won't feel as special as it does right now. So I think it's better to give the game like a month after Easter event just to see how the game will continue to do and if it will still manage to keep a higher player count. Fish, for example, did make a comeback since it got its player count up by a good bit and managed to keep the player count up for months. But if Grow a Garden continues to push updates with good amount of content, listens to players, and tries to do something at least a bit unique for each event, I feel like it would easily make a comeback too. Anyway, make sure to like and subscribe. We're getting close to 25,000 subscribers, and I promised a Q&A video, and since we're getting close, you can write down your questions in the comments. You can watch one of these videos while waiting for a new one. They are good too. Join my Discord server or play our game with the links in description, and I will see you soon.